Hi, I'm Staci Conely. I was nominated as Visionary of the Year with Leukemia and Lymphoma Society for 2023 on behalf of our daughter Addison for her fight with leukemia. I met Addie when she was about 10 and a half years old. I fell in love with the little girl long before I ever fell in love with her dad. She was just amazing, full of sass, always smiling, and would always just give you a good time. We were in Hawaii and Addie got a little bit of a rash on her face. We weren't sure what it was from. In fact, she was allergic to Tide, so we thought she had allergic reaction to the Airbnb's sheets and washing. 2 days later, Addie's rash on her face got a little bit worse. My husband Chris took her to the urgent care there, since it was pretty much COVID still. The doctor came outside to talk to us and look in the car and look at Addie. He said it was a simple rash, some form of allergic reaction. We didn't think anything more of it. He gave her some hydrocortisone cream and some Benadryl. We had no idea that that's when the leukemia was forming and ravaging in her little body. We had went to the river. She had a bump on her leg. Addie kept telling me that the bump on her leg was hurting and we didn't know what it was. So I quickly looked at it and told her it looked like she had been bit by a spider or maybe some kind of a bug. On Tuesday, I immediately took her to the doctor and the doctor looked at it and did a swab of it and said, it looks like maybe she had gotten scratched from some coral in Hawaii. Maybe it was a spider bite. He wasn't sure either, but he wanted to send it off and he started her on a medicine called Bactrim. That Friday I called and asked what the results were and he said it was just really weird. It came back as skin cells. Something wasn't right. There was no infection whatsoever in this swab. On June 15th, the words again, something that just changes your whole life. I'm really sorry guys that your daughter has cancer. Addie's really sick. I'm pretty certain she has leukemia. Her white blood count is 168,000. Her platelet count is non-existent. Again, moments of ignorance for me. I didn't understand what those numbers meant. I'm not a nurse, I'm not a doctor. You quickly become one in this fight. But I didn't know. Addie started to cry, that's her older brother. And then Addie, when she stood up, she looked at me with this horrible face, this horrified face. And I said, it's gonna be okay. And she's like, it's not, I'm gonna die. I could tell you the time. I could tell you what's on the TV. I could tell you what she was wearing. In that moment, our entire world just stopped. And I said, baby girl, you are not gonna die. We're gonna save you, okay? We're just gonna go to the hospital. And I remember not knowing much about this again. Addie's leukemia count, or her white blood cells, was 188,000. It had grown 20,000 overnight. I asked about her hemoglobin and he said Addie's blood count is so low, the fact that she walked in here is a miracle in itself. If you would have waited any more time, Addie would have had a heart attack and died. Within a few hours, we're taken up to ICU, and looking back now, there were 16 people in that room that night. This is COVID time. They didn't allow anybody in the hospital, yet they allowed 16 people, the close family friends, in the hospital room with Addison. Looking back, I know that's because they didn't expect her to make it through that night. The feeling that we had, Chris and I walked with Addie onto the 5th floor, was that of significant hope and significant loss at the same time. Addie says, we're gonna beat this, best friend, right? I remember her telling me that, and the first time in front of Addie, I just cried. And I remember her laughing and telling Chris, is she gonna do this every day? And I said, Addie, I still can't even wrap my head around what's happening to us right now, because literally it's just been a whirlwind. I remember one day, the nurse was gonna give Addie her chemo. We had been checked out of chemo for about probably 24 hours, 26 hours, and we were supposed to do it again the next day. And it's very important with chemo that you give it the same time every day for the best advantage of it, so it's always level in your bloodstream. We asked the doctor, see, our son and daughter-in-law were gonna get married in 2020, but because of COVID, they had to cancel their wedding. So they had moved it to September 2021. We asked her if it would be okay, and she thought that Addie would be well enough to be able to go to their wedding. This was such an important event, such an important day, and Addie wasn't going to miss it. The words were shocking. They literally, again, brought me to my knees in prayer and disbelief. She pulled out her phone, she looked at her calendar, she started doing backwards counting and different things, and she said, the only option that I would think that she would have with a guarantee of Addie getting to go to the wedding is if you plan this wedding for 10 days. Tara decided to do her wedding on a Wednesday. It was going to be 10 days from the date that she'd picked her venue. Addie just couldn't wait. After all, her chemo had been done. We were just simply waiting for Addison's A&C to come up so then she can go home. Addie was so excited. She just could not wait for Tara to be her real sister. After all, that's all Addie had ever wanted, was just this big family to just love her unconditionally and be there for her, which they were. I remember how excited she was that her dad, Chris, got to marry Gabe and Tara. There wasn't a dry eye in the house, including the man presenting the bride and groom. We all cried. We were all so grateful because God had allowed us this day, this most perfect day, that Addie was included in. After Gabe and Tara's wedding, we went back to Chalk. Addie did her second round of chemo there. Again, we were in the hospital for 5 weeks. As Addie went through that one, everything seemed to be easier. She was still weak. At one point, she did pass out. She was really sick with her chemo, but nothing like the first round. I point blank asked the doctor if it was working, and she said she didn't feel that it was. In fact, all of Addie's white blood cells were just going right back up after the chemo would stop. They shouldn't have gone so high, but they kept doing so. I expressed to Addie that I wanted to leave Chalk and we wanted to go to City of Hope. And Addie loves Chalk. She loved the nurses. We went there on September the 11th, 2021. We sat down in hopes of our new miracle. This doctor offered so much light to Addie, sharing her story that her mom had passed away with AML, but she was going to do everything in her power to save our girl. They wheeled her to ICU, and for the next 3 days, Addie was in intensive care. Addie was non-responsive and completely comatose. Addie woke up in the hospital on her 17th birthday. Everybody said it was a miracle. I remember the day they wheeled her into ICU, Chris and I were sitting next to her bed and we were just praying, like, please God, let it be us, not her. Don't take her. Don't take her. We heard some commotion behind the curtains. At one point, I think Chris had walked over and opened it, and it was a doctor and 2 nurses that were standing there praying with us. And the power of prayer swept that room because our girl woke up. They told us that she wouldn't. They told us that this was probably the end and we would lose our girl. Of course, with strict rules, nobody could come and see her. No one could come and say their goodbyes. No one could even come into the hospital where we needed them to be, let alone just to say hi to Addie or say goodbye to her. Addie fought so hard when she came home. Addie was able to come home on October the 14th. The night she came home, had a little party at our house, and it was overwhelming to me because after all, she had just been in ICU. She had just literally died. The next night, Addie wanted Ryan to come over, our dear friend, and she wanted to be baptized. She wanted to know that if she were to die again, that she was going to go to heaven. And in that moment, our hearts were just pure of joy. Here's a kid that really didn't know a lot about God, now is completely turned just to God, wanting to know for sure that she was going to walk with Jesus. And that filled our hearts with so much hope. Addie would do 2 more rounds of chemo before she would be declared in remission. On November 10th, 2021, we were told Addie had made remission, something they had told us before that she would never make. If anything, Addie had more work to do, and this was shown in her going to remission. On December 9th, we would be checked back into the hospital. For December 17th, Addie would have a bone marrow transplant that was non-donor, non-familial donor. That donor gave of herself that day to make sure our daughter had a chance at life, and that donor gave our daughter 10 more months. On February 1st, Addie was able to ring the bell once again that she was completely cancer-free. Our hearts were completely overjoyed, but the effects and the feelings were very short-lived. On March the 10th, we went to the doctor, and the doctor had told us the week before that she was concerned some of Addie's numbers were off. She wasn't quite sure what it was, but they were off. They weren't the best. I explained that I was worried about it too because she was showing all the symptoms again of what leukemia looked like the very first time Addie had it. She had some bruising, no fever, but she was lethargic. She was back to not eating again. She had lost a lot of weight. Addie was down to 98 pounds. While we were driving, Dr. Shahani called. She wanted to first let us know how much she loved us and how much she loved Addie and how much she was going to miss us because she was putting in her resignation. And I remember asking her why, and she said, I have the worst possible news. I said, you're on speakerphone with Chris and I. What's going on? And she said, Addie's cancer is back, and it's really bad this time. I don't think we can save her. I remember asking her when she said that, what kind of time do you think we have? She said if you do nothing, 1 to 2 weeks. Addie's leukemia will soon take over her entire body. She will get in a lot of pain. She will start to sleep more, and you will get to the point where she won't wake up at all. You'll need to give her pain meds at home. We can order hospice, and you just need to prepare your family for this, and I'm so sorry. We hadn't slept in days. We sat at her bedside. Friends, family came over. The night before, they had done a candlelight vigil for her outside, and we let everyone walk in and say their goodbyes to our girl. I believe twice that day Addie was letting go, and we begged her to stay. Until 10:48 p.m. on October the 12th, she stopped breathing. Her normal breaths, they were slow, they were shallow, and we knew she was in pain. Although Chris had done multiple times that day, increasing her fentanyl according to the pharmacy, we were all just struggling, watching her now struggle for us. She took one last breath, and then they called the time of death. At home, surrounded by her family and friends, exactly the way she had planned. Please help the kids that are fighting, and for the kids, sadly, could be yours, that are going to fight just like she did. The system is broken, and we need more people to stand up and share their story and explain why our kids deserve more. And to know that people have the ability to make a change is the only thing that keeps us going every day. So please, help us, help them, because there's so many kids out there that don't have any voices, and we're going to be their voice on behalf of them.